All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. We are so happy to be here with you. And today we're talking all about the receivership framework. I'm so excited to get into this. If you have found yourself chasing or pushing or grinding, this is the episode for you. Before we get started, Arash, how are you?
I'm great, Mikey. How are you?
I am doing great as well. And we are in an environment of grinding and pushing and making things so hard. And so I'm really excited to dive into today's episode and the framework that you've put together for us. Let's jump right in.
Yeah, well, what I want to do today is I want to teach people how to surrender. When we relax, when we allow and surrender, we let the impossible rush into our life. So a common thing is people are grinding their way, okay? And this is one of the most life-changing shifts you can ever make. Surrender for me is one of the hardest topics to teach because it's such an emotional connection individually that everybody has to understand. And most people have been conditioned their entire life to chase results, to force outcomes, to grind, to hustle, to push. They've been taught that success is a fight and that everything they want sits behind a struggle. And it's very counterintuitive to our programming. See, our program is always fighting, right? It is always fighting to chase, but our soul was designed to receive. We were conditioned at a young age to push, but our soul operates by frequency and trust. We attract whatever we're in harmony with and whatever frequency we're on. And so you cannot be in receivership in a state of tension. So we've got to get really relaxed. And when we get really relaxed, everything starts aligning with the highest version of who we are. But Mike, the biggest thing is nobody that I know, maybe there are, but that I'm only giving you my experience, was taught from this higher truth. Because when we're tense, what happens? We're blocking everything. The thing you're chasing, most people are chasing money, so I'll say money is just being pushed away. But when we're relaxed, we become available for what we want. And that's why I wanted to talk about that in today's episode, because most people live their entire lives trying to achieve goals with the wrong energy. And they're thinking, if I just work harder, eventually I'll break through. But here's the truth. You can't create a life of ease from a state of tension. You can't. What's tension? It's coming from a state of fear. So if I'm in a state of fear, what is going to happen? I'm going to be coming from scarcity. And the universe responds to our energy more than anything else. But I want everybody to think about something amazing they achieved. And I want you to think when you achieved it, how free you were emotionally. I can think about a number of things that I did. And that's why it's always about being loose. But the universe is responding to who you're being while you're putting the effort. But I'm not telling you, action is the foundation of what we do, but we want to take that action with certainty. When we're certain about something, it's effortless. And if the energy is anxious, if it's hurried, the results are going to be slow. If the energy is desperate, the results are going to be inconsistent. If the energy is, I control the universe, I promise you, you're going to be in a lot of pain. But when the energy is calm, when the energy is confident, it's just different, right? It's like when you see a confident person, you just are like, everything is like a state of art, But when the energy is surrendered, the doors start opening immediately, timelines collapse, and what used to feel impossible starts feeling so effortless. And that's you're going to know it because that's when you're coming from your higher self and you're always in a state of receivership.
You said something. You said when you master this, you become available for what you want or available for your goal. What do you mean by that?
Most people are not available for their goal. When we are available for our goal, we're giving ourselves permission to soar. Most people never give themselves permission. What is the biggest challenge in the world right now is self-worth. Most people think they need to fight for their self-worth. So they're always thinking, once I get this achievement, then I'm validated. But then they're super unhappy, right? The truth is, self-worth and worthiness, we just have to accept. But since we've been conditioned by this old programming, these old virus codes, generational, that says, well, my worth is based on what I do. Well, you're always going to be chasing worth, and you're going to be unhappy because you're always coming from a fearful state. And that's why when you come and become available for what you want, the doors are always open. It's about allowing yourself to step in. It's relaxed. It's surrendered. But your mind, and that's why I'm telling you, your mind and your programming is what we've got to elevate. Because the mind, the one that was trained by society, by school, by culture, by past traumas, that mind was taught the opposite. It was taught to overthink. I've got to over-prepare. I've got to control everything, and you're always in a state of stress. But your soul is always looking on what's next. Your soul wants you to receive. Your programming wants you to fight. I got to fight for everything. Your soul wants you to trust. Your programming wants you to be analytical. Your soul is saying, I got you. I got you. What you want is already here. Your programming is like, not until I see proof. I need to see proof before I believe. This is why it is so hard for me to teach this, because surrender feels hard. You know, because a lot of people think, oh, if I surrender, I'm not doing action. That's not true. You're doing action with the outcome already clear in your mind. See, you and I, Mike, are not in control of how things show up. We cannot control the outcome. We control what we do. We control our energy. We control our effort. We control our focus. So we've got to align with what we want. That's what Einstein said. Just get on the frequency of what you want and match the frequency. He didn't say go grind, you're going to get on that frequency. That's the exact opposite. And a lot of people think grinding is a badge of honor. Now, I think grit is very important. You're like, oh, Rush, you just said grinding isn't the way. Well, grit is different. Grit is building the habits. But even when you're building grit, you're not forcing. You're just repetition, repetition, repetition. I always say, we were at an event a couple of weeks ago, and I told everybody this at the event. I said, one of the greatest gifts I ever got was understanding how to fall in love with repetition. See, we become what we repeatedly do, but control is an illusion.
You know, Arash, is part of this expectation, because you'll see someone there like, I want this, and it's way up here. But they're so busy being right where they're at. They're so busy with their thoughts, their behavior, their actions. They're right where they are presently, dealing with the present circumstances, and they're so far from what it is that they said that they wanted mentally.
Yeah, once again, that person, the way you just described it, is not available for what they want. There's no delays in the universe. Until we allow, we're not getting on the frequency to match, because everything in life is a frequency. So, like, if you look at you right now, what you're receiving, you're on that frequency consistently. And that's why you're receiving it. When we create quantum leaps, you jump frequency. That's why goal achievement is a manipulation of frequency. It's going from one frequency to another. So you're manipulating your energy. The moment you stop trying to control the process speeds up. The moment you stop forcing everybody in your environment, opportunities start appearing faster. And the moment you stop coming from need, you come from this is who I am, you become magnetic to what you want. But surrender, and this is an important point that I want everyone to understand. Surrender is not passive. It's not being passive. Okay, surrender is about power. That's why neutral, we did a whole episode on neutral. Neutral is surrender, and so you still act, you still move, you still show up better than you've ever done. You still kill off your old self. But you do it from identity, not insecurity. You do it from conviction, not tension. That's why we always want to be in a calm, confident manner, not in a fearful manner. But when your actions come from certainty, the whole world comes to you. That's why you never chase success. Success chases you.
Mm-hmm. You said something so good there because you said, you at the beginning you said relax, align, receive. And when you hear that, you can think that it means to be passive, to be nonchalant, to just be chill about things. But that's a little counterintuitive to everything you teach about. You have to be disciplined. You have to use your will. You have to hold the standard. But they're not working against each other. It's being surrendered with the right energy, holding the will and being disciplined, but not from a place of forcing, from a place of knowing. And so I just want you to make that distinction.
Well, what you're talking about, and it's a great point you bring up, but the key to doing this, you have to be disciplined. You have to build standards for sure, but you detach from your emotions. See, most people's standards are being driven by their emotions. They have it backwards. Your standards should drive your emotions, not your emotions driving your standards. So when you detach from your emotions, you're detaching from your senses. And that's where you have the highest level of self-esteem because you're creating from a state of worthiness. Detachment is not caring, it's not needing. See, when we come from need, now you're coming from scarcity. Needing is what creates resistance. As I always use the example, anyone who had a boyfriend or a girlfriend growing up that was super needy, you're like, get me away from that, right? Anybody can understand that, okay? So what we have to understand is when we detach, we're coming from full faith. What is faith? Seeing what we want all day long. That's our job. But we got to get in a relaxed state daily and get emotionally involved in seeing the outcome of what we want. But most people are visualizing hurried. So it doesn't come because they're not in this completely relaxed state. You got to get your body completely relaxed. So when you relax, you align and detach from the emotions, and your receiving becomes automatic. So there's some good questions we could ask ourselves. What would I believe if receiving was my default? Like if I knew that I knew this was my default mechanism, that's when everything gets drawn to it. What would I expect if it was already done? Like, Mike, if I told you your goal was already done, it was already there, would you be wondering, oh God, what do I got to do? What do I have to do? You wouldn't be forcing. You activate in receivership when you're really surrendered. You activate your cognitive map. Now you're listening to your intuition. A lot of people's intuition is firing at them, but because they're in such a hurried state, they can't even hear it.
Arash, this is so good, especially because there's so many people who are on this emotional roller coaster that depending on the results that day, they're high or they're low, or maybe even the results that hour. And what you just gave them was a ticket to get off the roller coaster and to hold their emotions with their goal, which is so, so good. So if someone they know they're grinding, they know they're trying to force, they know that they're not operating from surrender, what would your first step be, or what would your first piece of advice to them be?
We've got to work on attitude, because what is surrender? It's an attitude. So, Mike, you got to understand this. Like, I went through this. Like, I always use the example. One day I was talking to my mentor, and I said, I'm stuck. And he said, well, why are you stuck? And I said, because I'm letting the outside control me. He said, well, that's a dumb idea. And I said, I know. And he said, Arash, I'm going to tell you this. He said, anybody can have a great attitude when things are going well. He said, the true pros in life have an even better attitude when things are not going as well. But this is where the learning was for me. I was taught to force. So I had to change my attitude. And when I changed my attitude, everything changed. But I said this earlier, the soul doesn't force, it receives. So you're going to know if you're coming from your ego or from the highest version of you. When you relax, you align your identity and detach from the senses, and you step into receiverships. That's where quantum leaps happen. That's where my quantum leap happened. And I was like, oh, I like this feeling. This was effortless. So I just kept anchoring it and multiplying it. When you stop chasing, you start attracting the good you desire. So it was a long version of me answering your question, but here's what I want everyone to ask themselves. Where am I chasing instead of aligning with what I want? Like, where am I attached right now? Every day I ask myself first thing in the morning, in my morning routine, is there anything that's wise for me to let go of that I'm attached to? And then the next question is, what do I need to detach from? Another question that's coming in my mind, how would I trust? If I trusted fully, what moves would I make today? Like if I trusted, like it was impossible for it to fail, what moves would I make? And what evidence is showing up that I'm not even acknowledging that is showing me to trust more? So these are all phenomenal questions that will get you into receivership right away.
You know, Arash, this entire episode to me should be like a sigh of relief to everyone, because what you're saying is it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to feel hard. Like you just need to make this a little bit easier. You keep using the word effortless, which is so nice. And I think sometimes our expectation is that it's going to be hard. And so that's exactly what we get. In this whole episode, you're reframing the expectation to it doesn't have to be that way. It can be easy. It can be effortless.
Well, everything we've done great has been effortless. Truly. Now you might say I grinded there. You might have. Okay, but it wasn't great. I'm going to tell you that. I'm saying everything that we've done great. And I've achieved certain things that were a grind, and it was like exhausting at the end. There wasn't fulfillment. But when you really practice getting relaxed, being intentional, when we're intentional, it's not hurried. It's like, this is what I'm doing no matter what, and I'm just trusting. So you're activating one of the highest forms of attitude, which is faith. Because faith is just another word for receivership. You know, faith is knowing that you know that you know. So I will tell you, most people are out there chasing their goals, chasing validation, chasing being in the right rooms. We don't chase it. Once you're relaxed, everything starts flowing to you. That's why I think this is so important to start asking the critical questions that I gave in this episode. Because receivership is where it is. I'm always asking myself too, Mike, am I in receivership? That's why I'm telling all our clients, like we'll be on our elite coaching programs and I'll look at their face and I go, you guys are too uptight. You guys are too tight. I need you to loosen up. See, when we're loose, that's where magic happens. If you'll watch any high performer, any elite performer, when they're in the highest pressure situation, they're always loose. Then you'll watch people trying to strive, trying to like grind their way to it. They're always uptight. We want to be relaxed because that's when the good comes to us.
You know, Niraj, just to tack on to what you just said, you might be able to grind your way to a benchmark. You might be able to grind your way to a goal, but grinding is not scalable and it's not something that you can maintain forever. It just won't work long term. And so this is something that you really need to master if you want to create long-term success.
Yeah, there's no question. This was a game changer in my life. I'm telling you. Like, and I'll notice times if I'm like too into the grind and I course correct. I say, just loosen up. Everything's happening perfectly. This is how I talk to myself. There's no delays in the universe. You're causing the delay, you know? And everything is preparing us. What I've learned is if I haven't received something, I'm not ready for it yet. So I've got to relax. I've got to relax and trust because everything is happening perfectly. That's why this journey of creating your dream life, really creating a world-class life is hard. You know, it's committing to the journey that's hard. The actions itself are not hard. And that's why on all our podcasts, I'm giving everybody weapons. You know, I'm giving them weapons that they can use. Like last week we did the $1 Million Playbook, you know, and this week we're doing receivership. They work so closely together, you know, but I want you to be focused. I want you to be hungry. I want you to be the ultimate competitor with yourself and beat your personal best. But all those things are not forceful. They're coming from a relaxed state. When you come from a relaxed state, I promise you, you are going to 10x everything you're doing.
Yep. All right, Arash, let's get into an action step for today.
Well, my action step is I want you to consistently answer the question. That means you're going to have to listen to this podcast again. Why do I want you to listen to it? Because you're only picking up 20% of what I'm sharing. The repetition is so illogical to your programming, but the people who are winning are so emotionally involved in the repetition. The repetition is how you rewire your subconscious mind. And I want you to answer those questions, not just once in a while. Write them down, journal them, and then ask them every day. See, if you put everything in front of you, you expose yourself. And exposing ourselves is great because that's how we become aware so we can make change.
All right, Arash, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. And if you would like to join us in person, we have a world-class wealth event coming up that is going to be so good. There is no better way to start the new year. This event is in January in Scottsdale, Arizona. And if you'd like to join us, go ahead and send an email to hello@vosscoachingco.com. We'll get you all the details. For now, leave us a rating and review. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the 7-Figure Standard podcast. Thanks, Arash.
Thanks, Mikey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 7-Figure Standard. We hope you found the insights and strategies helpful on your journey to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform to help us reach more people like you. To learn more about Arash and Mikey and how Voss Coaching Co. can help you achieve your goals and reach new levels of success, visit vosscoachingco.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of 7-Figure Standard.